thanks for joining us today as we talk about some of our top cards from Sword and Shield.
Hot dog, top 10 list.
Woohoo! Now, we've got a little different direction here as opposed to, some channels where they just take 10 cards and tell you the 10 cards they think are the best in the set. We were discussing and decided we'd break it down by trainer top 5 and Pokemon top 5. If we had to have a top 5 energy, Aurora energy would be the top, followed by Metal, Lightning, Psychic, Fire, and Water. No, Fairy falls on another list. We'll also be talking about some cards that just make us laugh a little bit. So we're going to talk about the top 5 trainers first. As we went and looked for the top 5 trainers, you're going to notice our top 5 doesn't include an obvious inclusion, but we wanted to put a top 5 for anybody new to the game who is just looking to build a deck around some of their favorite Pokemon and what cards would help them the most. So keep in mind that we have some honorable mentions for things, and we'll go from there. So we're going to start off with honorable mentions for our trainer cards. Obviously, the top honorable mention here is going to be Metal Saucer. This card is great, especially for Zacian and the other metal support that came out in this set. The thing that we'll note, though, is it's specific to metal decks, and that's why we decided not to put it in our top 5, because if you're not building a metal deck, you really don't need to invest in these.
Then following up, we got Air Balloon. Similar to Float Stone in the past, it gave a lot of Pokemon free retreat. Air Balloon, it only reduces by 2, but you're not going to have that many Pokemon that have 3 or more, so Air Balloon should work out well for you.
And we've got Lucky Egg, which is going to save your butt if you're a Blacephalon. So let's turn this into rock, paper, scissors and bring out your Lysander Labs.
And I mean, for those of you who've played for a while, you'll know Lucky Egg is a reprint, actually. Back from almost the Platinum set, if I remember correctly.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So the other thing that we put in our honorable mention is some of the reprints that just came up in this set, like Energy Retrieval coming back into standard format.
Energy Retrieval, man. I love playing
Energy
that.
Search, which...
Black and white, I think.
No, I'm trying to think of what card makes that card obsolete almost.
Professor's Letter?
No, I feel like there's something more recent.
Spinner,
yeah. So, I mean, Spinner is just a better energy search every turn. And on turn 2, going second, it's a better energy search. So, I guess when Energy Spinner goes, it'll be nice to know that we do have energy search in format. And as much as everyone at this table hates coin flips, we're happy to see Pokemon Catcher back to give access to some of those V Pokemon, and gain around things like Clefairy Dolls may end up being important. If you check out any of our other videos, you'll hear us talk about Lily's Pokédoll. Sorry. You hear us talk about that a lot just because it seems like it'll have a pretty good impact on this format.
But now, we're heading into our top 5 trainers. And number 5, Incense, Evolution Incense.
This one kind of came a little bit lower on the list just because, not every deck does play Evolution Pokemon, but it is a great card if you are. There's no cost to it. You just have it in your deck, and you get an Evolution Pokemon out, making some of your combo pieces just that much easier to get into play.
Number 4, Old Rod.
Now, this is a card I think the game has really needed. It's a way to get things back from the discard pile with fewer restrictions. A lot of cards got the up to text added to them. Like Palpad got, you now may get up to 2 supporters to shuffle back into your deck. So this card lets you get up to 2 Pokemon, and then you may also get up to 2 basic energy cards shuffled back into your deck. Some of those decks that burn through things easily, if you're playing like a high counter Professor's Research, you're going to benefit from this just being able to send things right back into the deck so it feels less costly. You might need to discard a important Pokemon for Quick Ball, and then you can throw it back into your deck once you've resolved the Quick Ball. Overall, it just has a whole lot of potential.
Number 3, Marnie.
So this is Judge on steroids. You and your opponent both shuffle your hand, and I think that's kind of like the first time in a while that I can think of that we've had a card where you shuffle your hand, and then put it on the bottom of your deck. And I think it's the first time where we've had a supporter that just puts cards on the bottom of your deck. After that, you're going to draw 5, and your opponent gets to draw 4 cards. Paired that with that new first turn supporter rule, you can really mess your opponent up, giving them a 4-card hand to play with if you're going second. This card is going to lead to some interesting situations at events.
Yeah, don't end bait your opponents with Marnie. Actually, I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, you can, but it's a lot easier to fix if they don't do the other bad thing you can do with Marnie. And that's you shuffle your hand into your deck. The card says to put it at the bottom of your deck, and there's a whole lot of talk on what's the correct way to correct that. I know a lot of judges that are talking about the correct fix is...
it's to flip the table, Evan. I knew it.
Is just to give it a gameplay error major, which is like a double prize penalty starting at tier 2 events, because the hand should be in the deck, so it the game state didn't get as damaged as it could have. There are people that argue, let's say your opponent played Volkner to build up a combo piece for their next turn, and you Marnied them out of it, and then they accidentally shuffle their deck, and so now that Electro Power, that Custom Catcher, isn't at the bottom of the deck where you needed it to be. It may be at the top of the deck now. So, I think it'll be a thing that sees a whole lot of conversation and talk about how to properly assess the penalty. If you can verify that situation to a judge saying, I played the Volkner, and my opponent played the Volkner, and they got this, and then before I had a chance to cut their hand, which is now something you don't have the chance to do, they shuffled it back in. You might make the case that this should really be a quad prize penalty because you broke the game state a bit more by changing the order of a card that may be relevant to the game state. But just be mindful. Try to catch your opponent before they pick up their deck to shuffle. Make sure you're cutting it. You could be one of those people that if you're super nice, you cut their hand, then put their deck on top of their hand for them, so you're, even circumventing it.
Man, yeah, Marnie's a tough card.
Tough
card.
Just creates interesting situations.
Number 2, the Professor's Research or Professor Magnolia.
Well, the Professor Magnolia is actually like a sub-hitting under Professor Research. It's to clarify that this is Professor Magnolia's Professor Research. I was kind of hoping when we saw that this was called Professor's Research, Professor Magnolia, that we'd go back in errata cards like Sycamore and Juniper to all just be Professor's Research, and as long as you had a Professor's Research, you were fine. Because we always had that issue in Expanded that if you've been around for any amount of time, it doesn't matter, but you're only allowed 4 copies of a card in a deck. Unless it's Professor Sycamore or Professor Juniper, then you can only have 4 of one, and you can't mix and match and have 2 of one and 2 of the other. Whereas if we just change them all to be Professor's Research, it would be a non-issue because it would cover.
They left a mess. And is this card busted?
This card is stupidly busted. It's a straight discard your hand, draw 7 cards. So many times has that been a very powerful effect. You look at decks like Pikarom and Malamar that benefit from dumping certain resources into the discard pile. You might even look at, something that has an attacker based on, the Alolan Ninetales with the no energy attack cost that does more damage for every tool in the discard pile. So you could use it as an easy way to dump some of those resources and get things going. It's just a strong card. Seeing 7 extra cards on your turn. If you played in pre-releases and were, lucky enough to get 1 or 2 of these in your kit, you just saw how fast a 40 card deck, or 36 cards, minus another 7 cards, 29 card deck can go. Playing 2 researches, you discard 14 out of your 29 cards. There was a game where I almost decked out playing just because you could draw so much and, use effects like that.
Number 1, Quick Ball.
So this card makes the top because it's the most universally beneficial. Every deck has to play at least 1 basic Pokemon. Now, if your deck only plays 1 basic Pokemon, Quick Ball is probably not for you. But there are not too many decks that I can think of where you would only play 1. Now, we have like those quad decks where you play 4 copies of 1 Pokemon. and now you have a more consistent way to get it. So, every deck can make a use for this. It's very simple. You discard a card, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, and add it to your hand. This card is a godsend for things like Pikarom and Malamar, being able to search out Tapu Koko Prism Star, being able to get your Inkays while putting Psychic Energies in the discard piles. You can play this with Mysterious Treasure, so you can use Quick Ball for Inkays and Mysterious Treasures for Malamar. You can play this with Mewtwo to find your Mewtwo while discarding one of your GX attackers. You got a whole lot of options here.
In before someone in the comments says, fossils, that's the exception. That's where I don't want basics. We know. Give us a good fossil deck.
Alright, so we're going to move over to our top 5 Pokemon and honorable mentions from Pokemon. These may have like a little more discussion behind them just because you can argue about some of your favorites, some cards that just in general have a place somewhere but not other places. And I think like this was honestly like a little hard for us to compile because like it's a base set and typically base sets don't have the best Pokemon in them. This was kind of like an interesting exception because there are a lot of Pokemon that have a lot of good uses for things. So I'm going to start off with one of our honorable mentions that is one of my favorites, and that would be the Inteleon line. The middle form Drizzile lets you search for a trainer card when you evolve into it, which, you have Evolution Incense, so you can go Sobble, Evolution Incense, get your Drizzile, and get a supporter if you're did drawing, and that seems really good. Inteleon gets you 2 trainer cards when you evolve into Inteleon, and his attack is only like a water and a colorless for 120 with a 20 snipe. It's not the best, but it's a really adequately costed attack for being a stage 2 and, with all the utility you have. I mean, you can even build decks with the Inteleon engine that don't plan to ever attack with Inteleon just to be a way to get like your rare candies or things like that. I mean, I know pre-release is a super niche format, but like, when I was playing, I had Inteleon Rillaboom for my deck, and being able to grab Rare Candy and Evolution Incense to get something out on the field was helpful in a lot of the games. So, it has some options.
So another honorable mention is Galarian Berserker. I think the card is really good, being able to boost your damage, but only on metal Pokemon. That's the huge issue, is it's only with metal Pokemon.
Morpeko V makes another honorable mention. It's got a great hit and run style attack, and decks like Donphan were always popular when they came out. You've got the Pokedolls to hide behind. The problem with it comes that it's a hard attacker to stream because of its energy cost. So we can really rate it higher. But, it's a great card if you take the time to think about it and build around it.
If you win a League Cup with Morpeko V, please post in the comments and tell us why we're wrong. Really grill us, man.
The next card we got is Frostmoth. A lot of people are hyping up this card, being able to just dump energy however you want. But the limitations, even though it's only a stage 1, it's only for water energies on water Pokemon on your bench. So it's just got some limitations that keep it down lower in the honorables.
And kind of rolling in with Frostmoth, we have Keldeo V, which is a really solid attacker in a Frostmoth deck. It has that typical base 50, does extra damage for every water energy attached to it, so you can make the attack ramp up really quick. So it might be a way that you play Frostmoth if that's the route you choose to go.
Like Inteleon, with our other stage 2 line we got here is Rillaboom, being able to search the deck for 2 grass energy and throw it on whatever, I believe. I don't think it's limited.
Nope.
Unlike Frostmoth, it's not limited to only grass types.
That's what you get for playing a stage 2, is not having limitations like that. And I mean, he's super bulky too, at like 170 hit points, so he's going to be like hard just to one shot real quick without feeling bad about it. I mean, yeah, we've got guys who hit over 170, but that attack usually has some sort of drawback or cost, or you have to play a modifier, so it's not necessarily something you can always spam back to back.
Wow, can you believe that 100 HP stage 2s, that was a thing? They
Yeah.
made cards like that. That's 170.
And we're even talking about that being a low number for, or an awkward number too. One card that I always just like, because the video game character Cramorant V, man, Cramorant's like the funniest looking thing. You know, if you haven't played the video game, if he uses the attack Surf or Dive, he ends up getting a Pokemon caught in his mouth, and it's either Aeriscuda or Pikachu, depending on how many hit points he has. And then when you attack him, his ability fires it out of his mouth, and if it's the Aeriscuda, you take like 25% damage, and if you get Pikachu, you get paralyzed. And it's just a weird Pokemon, but like, he's got two really neat attacks in here. He's a 200 hit point basic, which is, you know, amazing. He can, for 1 energy, he can search your deck for any 2 cards, put them into your hand. And then for 3 energy, it snipes 160 damage, but then you discard all the energy attached to Cramorant. So there are ways you can fuel that attack, and it requires, you know, a little bit of creativity here or there, but it's definitely an interesting card to play around with if you're playing something like, you know, Malamar or a Porygon Z deck. It's an easy card to fit in.
Then we got Sableye V. You know, it's a really good card because you can get trainers back with its first attack, but the big highlight of the card is the second attack for 2 dark energy. It's 10 plus 60 for each damage counter already on the opposing Pokemon, and that's going to be seen with Zigzagoon most of the time. You can also use Weezing, but a big problem that's keeping Sableye down in the honorables is its double dark energy costs.
You know, maybe an expanded where you have access to Dark Patch and Max Elixir, you can make that double dark cost look not so bad, but right now we don't have like a really easy way to accelerate dark energy onto this guy that's consistent.
I think that's funny that we're having this conversation about how, you know, like just 1 turn of attachments, just, you know, you don't have the patience to wait 1 turn. Like, I think that's just a sign of how quick things are in the game right now.
Yeah. And going on the opposite end of this game being quick, we threw this guy in as an honorable mention, especially in Expanded, is the Snorlax VMAX. This guy comes in rocking 340 hit points. You know, probably the biggest we've seen on a playable Pokemon card. Please don't tell us about those cards that have like 1,000 hit points because they're jumbo promos from movies or whatever. We know those exist, but like in terms of a card you could actually put into your deck and play a game with it. Yeah.
Zoroark and Legends.
Yeah. Like the Bird Trio that has 500 hit points. There are tons of them, but this guy, he rocks 340 hit points. Interesting note is his 4 retreat cost lets him have access to buff padding if you really want a 390 hit point.
Oh my
I
god.
think it's 380. Is it plus 50?
Plus 50 for buff padding. So you have 390 hit points on this guy. So, you know, you can tank through things like max potions and Ace Rollin' expanded. You know, depending on the engine you played, like if you played a fairy engine and could use Aromatisse to move the damage, you can max potion with no real drawback. He benefits from triple acceleration energy, so you can max potion and reattach a triple acceleration, so it's almost like, you know, you didn't have to worry about that part. But his attack, G-Max Fall, it does 60 damage plus, I think it's 30 more damage for every Pokemon on your bench. When you throw something in like Skyfield, where you now have 8 bench spaces, that goes up to 240 damage for 3 energy. What's essentially a Stage 1 Pokemon. You already want tons of Pokemon on your bench, so you can play things like the new Chinchino that has the not trade ability. You could play Zoroark GX that has the trade ability. You can play Sudowoodo with Roadblocks, so you have Skyfield and limit your opponent's bench. So that 300 damage is like a number that's really obtainable, and expand it where you have, max elixirs while he's still just Snorlax V, double colorless energy for when you want to kind of build like a more consistent Snorlax than depending on triples. You got a lot of options there.
Too many.
So I think that covers it for the honorables. Now we're going to go into the main pokes, the star of the shows. Number 5, Coco V.
Alright, so Tapu Koko V, we let it get up here because it really kind of revitalized the Pikarom archetype. One big complaint about Pikachu and Zekrom tag team, Alolan Raichu tag team, is you didn't have something that could consistently hit a big number. Like, both those tag teams cap out at 160 damage, Pikarom only at 150, unless you use their GX attacks, and, you only get one of those GX attacks per game, where Tapu Koko V, he gets 200 for 3 energy. You can't use the attack next turn, or you can't attack at all next turn, and he has free retreat, so that's not really that big of a drawback. And so, I know we're talking 40, 50 damage, but that might save you 1 or 2 electro powers as you're trying to plow through something big like that. So he makes it into our top 5. Coming in at number 4 is Oranguru with Primate Wisdom. This is an interesting card. I mean, Oranguru tends to do a lot with your deck. We've seen resource management, adding cards back to your deck. Instruct to draw up to 3 cards. Well, now Oranguru lets you take the top card of your deck and switch it with a card in your hand. And this card has like a lot of interesting applications. You can play it in a deck like Zacian, where you benefit from having metal on the top of the deck. You have a metal in hand, you put it on the top of the deck, and you guarantee an energy attachment from Intrepid Sword. You've got the Mad Cargo GX that can accelerate energy to itself if the top card Spire. So again, you use his ability, put it on top of the deck, guarantee your acceleration. Let's say you're about to play Marnie and you have one card you really want to keep. You could use your ability, put the card on you want to keep back on top of your deck, put the other 4 on the bottom, or put the rest on the bottom and draw back into the one card you wanted. In stage 2 decks where you might want to play Professor's Research, you can save a card from your hand by tossing it back on top of your deck. I just feel like it gives you a whole lot of options for, a bench sitter.
You can also use it with Zacian V to guarantee a medal off of Intrepid Sword.
And that's why it was my first example.
Oh, crap. I'm sorry.
What's next?
All right, coming in at number 3 is the Obstagoon Evolution line.
Yeah.
The first thing I saw when we saw Tantrum Headbutt on Galarian Zigzagoon was, man, Crobat G's back? Wow. For those that don't know, Crobat G just has an ability that threw 1 damage counter on your opponent's side of the field. Galarian Zigzagoon does the same thing. He's rocking 70 hit points, 1 retreat cost. For 2 energy, you have a chance to do 30 damage. So right there, he's not too impressive. It's just that Tantrum Headbutt ability that makes him, kind of formidable to deal with.
And you can't power spray it.
Yeah. Moving up the evolution line, we go into Galarian Linoon, and he kind of gets ignored a little bit because he doesn't have that when you evolve, place damage counters ability. But a lot of the Obstagoon decks that I've played and that I've seen are using Pokédolls, because they're great to hide behind when you're setting up. And his first attack for 1 energy is 20 damage, and he switches back to the bench. So you start building up these damage counters, and you can play things like Sableye V, who does 10 plus 60 more for every damage counter. If you're playing Yveltal GX with its Doom count, you can work on getting those 4 damage counters on the defending Pokemon, all while preserving your stage 1, who you're trying to get up to Obstagoon, obviously, without losing that evolution line. So I think that's, a nice ability that it has. It does have like another attack that's pretty insignificant because it's just overcosted and doesn't do enough damage to justify it. And it rocks like a nice 100 hit points. Not being a GX means he can't be, great catcher. The only way you're going to get to him is through a Fion or a custom catcher or a
Pokemon
Catcher, 9 Temptations, whatever Venusaur and Snivy's abilities called. You're a little limited in how you easily get to them. So, it helps getting to your final form. And speaking of the final form, the big boy is Galarian Obstagoon. So when you play this guy from your hand to the field, he has an ability called Obnoxious Shout. And you get to put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. So you mentioned that Evital GX earlier, that if they have 4 counters, you knock it out. So between Zigzagoon and Obstagoon, you get exactly 4 damage counters. So you can drop that knockout out of nowhere, which is, great in and of itself. He has 160 hit points, which makes it obnoxious for things like Morpeko and Pikarom to one-shot him because they have to play a plus power to get that extra 10 damage down.
And he's a rock star, so you win anyway if you play the card.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this guy is ready to rock and roll. So his attack for a dark and a colorless is Obstruct. It does 90 damage, and he cannot be damaged by basic Pokemon during your opponent's next turn. It's a great ability to have in a format that has a lot of powerful basics. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that it prevents the damage. It doesn't prevent effects of attacks. So things like
Bursting Burn. We have a video of it.
Doom Count, Zero Vanish. These are all things that are going to get through it, and if you're playing Pikarom and they got Obstruct off, you can come in and paralyze them with Raichu and Alolan Raichu, and then they can't Obstruct next turn unless they switch, and then you can swing in again and get the knockout with whatever way you want to go about it. So that is a drawback, but it's still a very powerful chain of cards. When we look at things like the Sableye to go with it, let's say you get the Zigzagoon and the Obstagoon to put 4 damage counters on something. This boosts Sableye's attack up to 250 damage, plus the 40 that's already there, making it 290. And there's not much that lives through that. Anything that does, you kind of have this neat ability now where, let's say you jumped up to 300 hit points and you leave them at 290. Then on your next turn, you just throw down another Zigzagoon and Headbutt Tantrum for the last 10, and you get a knockout on your turn, causing them to switch into something else, as well as getting to swing into something fresh with whatever you have ready to attack. So overall, he's just a really neat Pokemon.
Number 2, we got Cincino. This is a personal favorite of mine. It's essentially Zoroark GX reprinted, or also Empoleon from the Black and White series reprinted, being able to discard and then draw 2. But sadly, it doesn't have the same attack as Zoroark GX. Instead, it gets Energy Assist, which lets you accelerate some energies. So instead of becoming an attack and support, it's a straight support Pokemon. And it's also not a GX or a V, so you only get 1 prize from it.
And, we were talking earlier that Energy Assist 40 damage is kind of neat in like an Obstagoon deck where it can set up the Doom Count, and it gives you a form of energy acceleration for any types that don't have their own natural form of energy acceleration. So, I wouldn't base my whole deck around accelerating with Cinccino, but if you have that option, it's definitely there. So coming in at number 1 is the big boy of the set, Zacian V.
Woo!
There's so much you can say about this card, and we're going to try to condense it in just a minute or two so we don't waste your time. But this guy's got 220 hit points. It's got 3 Metal Energy, does 230 damage. He can attack next turn. We've already seen that you can't attack next turn effect on cards, and it's never stopped a good card from not being able to do that. We've got Malulana, we got Switch, we can hard retreat with Metal Saucers available.
Dawnwing's
Balloon. You have so many ways that you can get this guy out of the active and reset that you can attack next turn. And so, that's a really strong attack. It even beats out some of the I can't even think of GX attacks that we had for a while. And so if that wasn't enough for you, we decided to give this guy an ability called Intrepid Sword, where you can end your turn, draw 3 cards, and if you find any metal energy, you can just slam them right down onto him as an extra attachment. So this guy can come out of nowhere real fast, hit for big numbers, and he accelerates to himself. And any cards that you didn't get to attach, they're just cards in your hand now. You don't discard them, you don't shuffle them back, you just draw 3. This guy doesn't even have to be the attacker in your deck. He can just be a draw engine for whatever you're playing, where if you don't need to attack, you end your turn, draw 3 cards. There's nothing wrong with that.
It's just got everything. The support, the draw, even support for itself, being a Metal Saucer. Galarian Berserker, which we mentioned in the Honorables, lets it one-shot things. ADP allows it to one-shot things. Lucario Melmetal with Frying Pan allows it to tank things. So it's literally got everything you can ask for.
And I think, like, in a set where he's your poster child along with Zamazenta, one of them has to be Love Dom, because Zamazenta certainly didn't get the love. It's kind of like Solgaleo and Lunala, where every Solgaleo card just was really good, and every Lunala card was really bad. So hopefully Zamazenta can get some love at some point, but right now it goes to Sword Doge.
Are they like brothers, or do they come from the same, like...
So the story...
Read the manga.
Yeah, so the story behind the Sword and Shield Pokemon is... There's an event called the Darkest Day, and it is stopped by 2 heroes, one carrying a sword and one carrying a shield. And Zacian and Zamazenta are supposed to represent those heroes who help stop the Darkest Day.
That was a real question. I wasn't asking just for the video.
Yeah, Nick
but
is
now
not
you
much
learned
into
too.
the video games, so we are helping him out here. Alright, so just for a little bit of fun and flair, we came up with a list of 10 cards that for one reason or another made us laugh. Are they funny? Are there cards that you might buy into thinking they're good when really they're not? And so this is humor mixed with let's help people who are new to the game not fall into bad
Wait a
routines.
minute. We weren't going to pass this off as the real top 10 list?
I mean, it was a good idea, but...
We could be like that JoJo stand where you go to the alternate dimension and then that's our
Nick
top 10.
doesn't know what he's talking about.
I don't know.
Read the manga.
So coming in at number 10 is Cinderace, and we're talking about the Cinderace with the Libra ability, where when it becomes active, he attaches 2 fire energy from the discard pile to himself, and then like his attack cost is discard 2 energy to do a bunch of damage. Look, this reminds me of the Blaziken that came out several sets ago, where we were positive this card was going to be super busted, and then like 2 weeks into playing it, we're like, it's hot garbage. Everything on there seems like it's a great thing. Like, it's got a 1 retreat cost, so you can even throw down U-turn board and like switch between your Cinderaces really easily. It fits in with, a welder kind of deck. You
Busted
can play
combo.
all that stuff.
I'm out of here. I'm quitting the game. I can't deal with it.
And then this just falls into that trap of, it looks really good on paper, it's just not.
It's a trap.
Like, the best use I see for this card is, your league has decided to have meme deck Saturday, and you're like, what deck could I play that's bad, but has a chance at being okay? This is probably the deck.
Number 9, we got Lantern. So this does 90 damage for lightning, colorless. And if you've got an energy card in your opponent's hand, you get to see their hand. The defending Pokemon is paralyzed, so what you do is you run 4 Surprise Box from Unbroken Bonds, and you force an energy into their hand, and you just paralyze them every time, except for the turns like you're actually just going to knock them out. Guaranteed paralysis. And there's another card you guys brought up that goes with Lantern. What was it?
TCL Grunt.
Oh my
it just
God.
bounces a card back. So that's 8 turns where you can guarantee paralysis. Like, this deck falls apart against a deck that doesn't play any energy. And this is one of those trap cards where on paper, it looks really good. You're like, I can paralyze every turn. My opponent doesn't have that many switches and Malos and Lanas. And like, I'm going to yell grunt so they can't even keep like an energy stream. It's just not. Like any deck that's good, one of the things that it has to be able to do is accelerate energy or break energy attachment rules. And so like you put them back one use of their ability playing something like yell grunt. You surprise box them, you give them the energy, but they accelerate it to something else. Like, there's just no world where this works out for you. Like, the pre-release. Play it in your pre-release if you pulled one. Like, I won't blame you. Coming in at number 8, this is just a great attack name. It's from Raichu, not Alolan Raichu. We're out of Alola. We've moved to Galar. His attack is called Painful Punch. Not painful, but painful. He's full of pain for you.
But
coming in at number 7, this is one that kind of holds a special place to me, is Wobbuffet V. This falls into the trap of it's a V card, and so it's shiny, and as a kid you may really want it, but it doesn't do a whole lot. For 2 energy, you can switch all the damage counters on Wobbuffet over to your opponent's active Pokemon, and with 220 hit points, okay, that's nice. So as long as you don't die in one hit, you get to move a lot of damage counters.
It's very easy to do 220 damage in this format.
Yeah.
it's the Uno reverse card. No you.
Yeah.
Whatever your opponent does, you just say, okay, no you.
And, like, this isn't as good as some cards that were just, like, put your damage counters on the defending Pokemon. You switch them. So if you've hit this Pokemon at any point, hit your opponent's Pokemon at any point, you still keep damage counters. So, you know, there's not much going for it there. And then we have, I can't read the attack.
Shadowbind.
Shadowbind. It's a 2 psychic for 70, which isn't terrible. It's very affordable, adequately priced. And your opponent's Pokemon can't retreat during the next turn. Well, look, with the first attack, this is just bad synergy. You want your opponent to retreat into something with no damage counters on it, so you full heal yourself with the first attack, but you've given them a you can't retreat clause. So, you know, it's great to be excited when you get like these these V cards and, you know, cards that look awesome, but you really need to take the time to sit down and think about, are they really as good as they sound?
Wait for Collinsville. It's expanded. You attach counter energy for 2 psychic Shadowbind, right? It's not a GX.
Nope.
So you can attach counter energy. I've done the research.
Yep. Counter energy does have a lot of interesting interactions with these V Pokemon because they are not EX Pokemon, so counter energy does work with them.
Play Pokemon. If you put counter energy on the ban list, I'm quitting. So don't do it.
Wobbuffet also is amazing in the pre-release scene. You know,
Yeah,
you've
would
got
be.
like Cinderace and Teleon and Rillaboom. Well, they hit you, and then you put it back on them.
And then you're probably knocking them out with it. Like it's silly, but you know, I'm a teacher and I hear kids all the time get hype about these cards, and I try to let them, you know, be hype until they're like, I'm going to play this in a tournament, and I'm like, no. And, you know, so I do try to help them because, you know, juniors and seniors are important for the Pokemon scene. If we lose all our juniors and seniors, there are no new masters. So always keep that in mind when you're thinking about how you interact with kids in this game. Coming in at number 6, we have Celebi V. This is another example of a card that just is bad. For 1 energy, you can call for friends, which, you know, I was kind of halfway hoping when we made this you can't play a supporter going first rule, we might be able to attack going first rule. And thankfully, no, because there's so many silly attacks you can power up. But, like, this call for friends attack where you search your deck for 2 Pokemon and then you put them into your hand and shuffle your deck, that's about the only time you'd ever use that attack, and you can't.
You have to have friends in order to call them.
Yes. Then we have Lifelink, which is 50 plus. It does 24 damage for each of your benched Pokemon. I mean, 2 for 150 seems good, but it's just not. Like, if it was 2 for flat 150, it would be marginally better. And even still...
that would still be bad.
Yeah. We're talking about a Pokemon with 170, 180 hit points that is weak to a common type, and it's just not going to go anywhere for you. So it's one of those things that if like Celebi is your favorite Pokemon and you want like the Rainbow Rare Celebi V, good news, you're going to be able to get it really cheap.
So the next card that we got is Zash Gold, only the Gold Zacian V or Gold Zamazenta. So the reason these are on the list is because you're never going to pull the Gold Zacian V, but your best friend is going to pull the card. And you're going to sit there so mad at them. You're going to be sitting at the pre-release, and they're going to be so excited because they got a Gold Zacian V, which is like over $100. And you're going to be sitting there with your Cinderace and just looking at them like,
my best pull was a quick ball.
We need to officiate that. We need like to make that a rule, like it's one of Murphy's laws, or it's Schrodinger's booster pack. You won't get it, but the guy next to you will.
Yeah.
And then Zamazenta, you're going to be mad because you're going to pull Gold Zamazenta and wish that it was Zacian. Why couldn't you have just been Zacian?
Yep, you're going to slide your cards the wrong way and see gold, and you're like, I got it, and then you're going to see like, oh, I got a rock.
It's like when your parents compare you to your sibling, like, oh, why couldn't you have just been Zacian?
Coming in at number 4, Snorlax V. This is a card that it's actually not bad because we mentioned his VMAX for Expanded, but he's one of those great cards that has a hilarious attack name called Swallow Up. I mean, Snorlax is a big dude, and he's got to swallow up a ton of berries to be able to keep going. It's 3 colors, does 60 damage, and he heals himself for as much damage as he did. If he had a lot of damage modifiers going for it, maybe you could get like a neat tanking deck out of it, but really his only damage modifier right now is Vital Band, and that's only a plus 10, and 70 versus 80 isn't, a huge difference in that when we talk about, healing damage. Coming in at number 3, Pokekid. There were several people at our pre-release who was like, man, this card is good. You can get any Pokemon out of your deck. And I was like, you mean in a pre-release, right? And they're like, no, it's good. Like, we don't have a search for we don't have a generic search for any Pokemon. And I was like, guys, it's a supporter. And they're like, I know, but you can get any Pokemon. Okay. Well, if in this set we hadn't got cards like Quick Ball and Evolution Incense, you might make a case that it's less bad. Not saying it's good, because still you have, things like Tag Call to compare it to, Professor Elm's research to compare it to. Even in the next set, we're going to see a card called Sonya that lets you get 2 basic Pokemon or 2 basic energy from your deck. So, I mean, people are going to argue, well, Sonya says basics, and this says anything.
But what about Rosa?
Again, yeah.
Rosa gets any.
Rosa gets you a Pokemon and energy and a trainer card. So, I'm still seeing a hard time in a world where this is a good card, when there are just better cards. Quick Ball, Evolution Incense, they're going to cover every other type of Pokemon that you could want to get. And so it's just a bad card that people think is good because they're not... I like to think these people just they have more of a life than I do, so they don't sit and read set lists for 3 hours when a new set's put out. And I want to give them credit that that's who they are.
Coming in at number 2, we got Hop. First of all, I think Hop is probably the worst rifle. If he wasn't talking about type advantages all the time, then we might get around to reading his actual card, which is the generic Draw 3.
And the thing I love about this is if you show this card to anybody playing any other card game, and it says draw 3 cards with no drawback, they will look at you like, man, this must be the most busted card in the set. And you're like, no.
This is horrible.
You think this is good? Wait till I show you this Wheel of Fortune reprint here. Wait, you can play 4 Wheel of Fortune? This is ridiculous. I don't think I've ever really seen these draw 3 cards be played in anything outside of a pre-release. The one time I've ever played this card was, or not this particular card, but the generic draw 3 is there's the barnacle Pokemon guy, his evolution, Bibarel, not no,
Barbarac.
yeah, something like that. But he has an attack where if you have like a certain number of cards in your hand, you do more damage, and
Yep.
it seemed great. Like we have meme deck Saturdays where we just play stupid decks to get it out of the system. So this is not me telling you there was a secret no leaks deck involving this guy, but you know, if you had a deck that needed to hand match or have a certain hand size, there are better cards that do it. But this is an option if you don't have anything. You know, a lot of these cards are designed for new players who don't have anything. But even Pokemon's starting to learn. If you look at like our 3 theme decks coming out, they all come with 3 professors' research trying to guide people in that direction of discard draw 7 is really good. That's so hard to explain to new players. They're like, but I have to discard my favorite Pokemon because it's an evolution and I can't play it. And they're like, but you don't have the basic to play, so why does it matter? And they just don't, you know, they don't get it, so.
Coming in at number 1, the almighty fairy energy. So, it's funny because Pokemon decided to do a bunch of type changes, like poison types are now dark types, and changing up resistances. But the big one is, you know, in X and Y they came out with the fairy type. So we had fairy types in X and Y, and then Sun and Moon, and now no more fairies. But the funny part is that fairy energy is a card in the Sword and Shield set when there are no fairy Pokemon.
I mean, yeah, we gotta keep them around for, you know, the people until rotation goes off where we officially lose all fairy types, which will be a good ways down the line since they, you know, made it all the way to the Sun and Moon block before we decided no more fairies. And, you know, I know this is like a controversial change to the game because, you know, we have one local player, she loves fairy types and was very vocal in seeing fairies go. But, like, from a mechanics standpoint, it was one of the best things that could happen. We already have, 8 types of cards now that each have their own energy type. And all that made was every type needed to be supported in every set for some reason. And that's how you end up with all these filler cards that when you see them in your booster pack, you're already like, bulk. Well, if we cut out some of these types, that's one less type that we have to make filler cards for. You know, I've played games like, I'll use Vanguard as an example, where they have clans instead of types. And when you go to buy a booster, it says this booster only supports these 3 clans. And so, whereas we have 20, 30 vanilla filler type cards, you might have 1 or 2 filler type cards for each clan in that set, because it was only focused on 3 clans. And we've never really seen a Pokemon set that only supports 3 different types. Now, that's not to say we don't see sets that show favoritism to types, but, you know, going ahead and cutting out a type is really just a step in the right direction. I mean, I was somebody for a long time until I sat down and somebody talked to me about it that thought, man, we should really have an ice type and a flying type and have like 50 different types. And then they're like, but this reason. I'm like, I'm never saying that again because it's just a bad idea. You know, I think the only thing that we complain about now, I run a Pokemon club at my school and trying to teach kids like, well, why does this colorless Pokemon resist fighting and this one's weak to fighting? I mean, that's the only argument anymore for having an official flying type so that we know why the flying Pokemon resist fighting and the normal type is weak to fighting. But most of them get it once you just tell them, think about the fact that it's a flying type Pokemon. They're, oh yeah, in the game they resist, because these kids catch on, and it's just a matter of explaining these things. So yeah, even when we pick 10 cards to be funny about, we can have some real conversation go on.
I guess the last thing I would say about the types is it's also a branding thing. I know it's a little bit off topic now, but it's a last minute note about the branding. You know, because we got like our last set was Cosmic Eclipse. Well, in Japan, you know, they had Night Unison, which is about dark types. What was the Double Blaze? That was about fire types. You know, in Japan, they are kind of centered around the types, but in America, they lump them all together. So now it just seems like this weird amalgamation. Like, you know, it's kind of hard. It's like, what does Lost Thunder even mean? Well, I guess it's based on Zeraora, but you don't see a bunch of lightning stuff.
Yeah.
Cosmic Eclipse. Well, I guess you consider ADP the star of the show. But, you know, all the cards aren't centered around ADP.
Wait, do you actually watch the commercials for the Pokemon trading card game?
Yeah, they're cute.
Wow.
Have you seen? Go watch the Cosmic Eclipse one.
They interrupt his JoJo movies on YouTube. That's how he sees them.
You know, for the Cosmic Eclipse one, they got the baby tag team, and ADP is just the babies like scrunch up like they're trying to fight, but then ADP just walks right past them, not even noticing.
Yeah, so let's close out and thought of what were some of your top cards that you're excited to see from Sword and Shield. I mean, we have, 206 cards in this set?
Too many.
Yeah.
Lantern, I'm done.
So, you know, go ahead, comment below, tell us what you like, and hopefully you enjoyed your pre-releases. And if you had a pre-release store nearby, you can start buying Sword and Shield on Monday. Otherwise, you're waiting till next Friday, based on when you listen to this video.
Ariados. Goodbye.